Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Kelly Ballard, Dave Patterson, and Scott Cosenza. And this is the Conservative 5, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. Hunter Biden is back in the news. On the heels of being indicted on 3 separate gun charges, attorneys for the problematic first son have now filed suit against the IRS. Hunter's counsel claims he was targeted by the agency. The suit cites testimony by IRS whistleblowers Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, who accused the IRS of mishandling the Biden investigation. Is he trying to get out in front of something worse, or is he correct and the 2 IRS agents have some serious explaining to do? Brace yourselves. Scott Cosenza is here with facts.
Thank you for that. And I'm just going to correct one little bit of a point that you said, which was that they mishandled the investigation. While they may have mishandled the investigation, that's not actionable as a tort or civil wrong. What is the disclosure of private tax information that the government has an obligation to protect. And that's what Hunter Biden has alleged these 2 agents have done. They've gone on, I don't think they've been on the C5 yet, but they seem to have gone on lots of other conservative media sources to talk about Biden's filings and tax data that he says he has a right to keep private. And so while some of the charges may involve the quote unquote whistleblower aspect of what those agents testified, the bulk of the charges seem to be about, hey, you went on TV and aired my dirty laundry. And it's important to sort of think about, for the record also, that Biden has not sued these people individually. He has sued the IRS and said, you have a duty to maintain the confidentiality of my information that I'm required to report to you. And when you don't do that, I'm entitled to money damages. And that's the nuts and bolts of it.
So what are the odds of this actually succeeding, Scott?
The complaint is pretty good. When I read it, it didn't seem like bunk. I don't have enough experience with this kind of an allegation to say, oh, well, this is what happens when the IRS illegally releases your funds, or rather your information. Now, funnily enough, LibertyNation.com's parent company, One Generation Away, was discriminated against by the IRS. The IRS had to pay us a check for money damages for discriminating against us because we were conservative and our free speech, exercising our free speech. But I don't think there are a lot of these cases around where we can say, okay, this is how it's likely to work out. I can tell you, though, that sometimes you read complaints and you think this is bunk. It was just made for a newspaper headline. And this did not have that whiff of it at all. It seemed genuine, and he may have he may get rather some significant money damages from the taxpayers.
Yeah, that was actually my question to Scott, because I was reading your interview with Mark Angelides, and you were talking about how every time this information is published by a media company, Biden would be awarded $1,000 for every instance. So this actually would come from the IRS, which of course taxpayer funds, correct?
So as I understand the relevant statute, it says that if a certain person, namely an employee of the IRS, inappropriately releases your information, every time that it's republished, that it is $1,000. And so the idea would be that every airing of a TV show, and I don't know if this gets into it, like maybe every Twitter, video click or YouTube, another $1,000 cha-ching. I was joking with my co-host, Mr. Tim Donner, on the Uprising podcast, that this could be the world's greatest scheme we've ever seen, which is that Hunter sues the federal government in the form of the IRS, and Joe Biden's the head of the federal government. He agrees to a quickie settlement of $1 billion with Hunter for these claims and signs the check.
But I guess you'd have to use big data to try to get a rough estimate of how many times that's mentioned in the press, correct? I mean,
well, I hate to think that we just gave him $1,000, but
that would be a secondary thing. In other words, first you'd have the liability, then you'd say, okay, how much is it worth? And in that discussion, Andrew, as I understand it, the plaintiffs or Mr. Biden would put forth a number, and then it would be up to the defense to kind of bat that number down and say, well, that's not really a good number, and here's why. And then they would fight about it in court, and the judge would rule.
So, Kelly, All this Hunter Biden stuff just it absolutely exhausts me. I'm just tired, so tired of him. I just want this first kid to go away. But do you think this is just good strategy of getting out in front of his other problems, or do we think he's really, that mad boo-hoo about his private information that we've already seen half of it on the laptop? But is he really going to boo-hoo about this?
Different kind of private information.
It's a distraction. It's a distraction, but it's also a way to recoup some of his losses. I agree that if the IRS did do that, he is a citizen. They're taking this opportunity to deflect from other things and to build their case, because right now with the Joe Biden impeachment, they want to try and say, but wait, look, we're victims here. So.
But since we're all here, I'd like to say one quick thing, though. I will never forgive Mark for sharing me the link to Hunter Biden's laptop. All that information made me sick. It was disgusting.
It was disgusting.
Dave, hey,
Dave, did you see that link?
Yeah, just briefly, but it was on YouTube. I had to go through the commercials to get to the good parts. But I think we're missing the question here. I think we're missing the real question, and that is, how much can a prisoner have in their savings account while serving their time in prison for sundries, candy bars, and things like that? And then I have a kind of a more important question, and that is, if all this suit stuff comes to pass after he is indicted and convicted, then can a convict benefit monetarily from their crimes?
All right. So to the first thing I'll say, Dave, you never want to max out your commissary credit because then you become a target by the other inmates. You want to keep it, to be able to satisfy your needs, but yet not, So the second point, be able
to satisfy someone else's needs in the big house, not the White House. The big house.
To the second point, there are restrictions on certain profiting from certain crimes, but this isn't that. This would be what's not included in those provisions, Dave, is if the police violate your civil rights while they're trying to prosecute you for those crimes, a bar to recovery in that instance. And nowhere I'm not aware that exists anywhere in the law. So that's what Biden's alleging. And just on the plain reading of the things, having seen these two guys on TV, boy, it sure seems like they probably did what he says. Now I'm open to the possibility that that's not the case, but that's where I am with it.
Well, I just don't understand, I guess. Here's the thing. He's privileged. And so he, of course, can go head to head with the IRS and make headlines. And if me or you or Andrew or Kelly or Dave decided to do that, we don't have those resources and nobody's going to follow us in the press. So, there's no fear for the IRS, but there's fear here. I mean, obviously, he's got the means to do it. So, I mean, he's really not just an ordinary American citizen.
It helps to get justice if you're rich.
Stephanie, I'd like to say one thing. Stephanie, my son Hunter is getting a fair shake from the government. And I will promise you, Jack, he will be innocent.
Jeez. Dave, say something, please. Break up the Andrew Moran comments.
So truer words were never said as he walks into a flag and fails to shake the hand of the president.
All right. Well, if anybody wants the last word, now is your chance because I'm about ready to end
Hunter
this one.
Biden. Oh, I was gonna take it right there, which is that Hunter Biden is absolutely being abused by the U.S. attorney, Mr. Weiss, and just like we should stand up for any citizen or person in America who's even a non-citizen. I know Kelly said citizen earlier. Anybody in the country deserves to have their and must have their rights respected. It counts for non-citizens too. It's never okay when prosecutors abuse their powers, and that seems to be what's happening in this instance. Not just I kind of looped in the gun charges, which we didn't really talk about that much, but basically the plea deal that fell through is now coming back to haunt Mr. Biden with some very serious charges. And I just think it's important that because we think about somebody's, behavior in bucket A doesn't mean we get to do whatever we want when it comes to bucket B.
Well, my grandma used to say what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I don't know, maybe Hunter is onto some smart strategic pre-planning. I don't know. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. And Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our television productions. I'm Sarah Cowgill. Thank you for joining us today for Free Thinking, Free Speech, LibertyNation.com.